The first signal wasn't a scream, not at first. It was a whisper, soft static bleeding through the edges of deep space transmissions. Scientists thought it was just interference from solar winds, a flicker in the data. But the whisper grew. It twisted into patterns no storm could make, shapes and sound that didn't belong to nature. Earth heard it, studied it, then moved on. People were too busy arguing about politics, chasing money and living in denial to care. The world had grown numb to warnings. We thought we had time. We always think we have time. But time ran out quietly, like the last breath before the fire. It began on the edge of the solar system, where the outposts drifted in silence. A mining vessel went dark, then another. The transmissions stopped mid-sentence. When the rescue team finally reached them, they found only debris, metal twisted like it had been torn apart by invisible hands. The crew was gone, erased from existence. No distress signals, no bodies, just the hum of the void, like something ancient had woken up and was hungry. At first, the world barely noticed. Humanity had become desensitized to tragedy. News headlines flashed for a few days, people shared theories online, and then the story sank beneath a flood of memes and scandals. But the ones who worked in deep space, they knew something was wrong. They saw the patterns in the losses. The missing ships weren't random. They formed a path moving closer to Earth. By the time the governments acted, it was too late. The first wave struck without warning. The skies over Mars turned red, then black. The colonies burned in silence. Those who watched the live feeds saw ships that looked nothing like anything human, shadows that shimmered, as if reality itself bent around them. They didn't use bullets or lasers. They used something else, something that tore through matter like light through glass. Whole bases vanished in seconds, their screams swallowed by static. On Earth, people finally looked up. Panic replaced denial. The cities went dark, the skies filled with defense satellites, and the militaries of every nation joined under one desperate command: survive. But it wasn't just a war for survival. It was punishment. Because this wasn't an invasion, it was a reckoning. Long before the first attack, before humanity left its cradle, Earth had been sending signals of her own: pollution, greed, destruction. The planet had been warning us in every language she could. Storms that grew too strong, ice melting where no ice should melt, forests dying faster than they could breathe. We called it climate change, we called it progress. But it was something deeper. Earth wasn't just dying, she was crying out, and someone out there heard her. When the aliens came, they didn't speak to us. They didn't ask for peace or surrender. They spoke to Earth. They burned through our satellites and carved symbols into the surface of the moon, markings that glowed like fire. The translation teams said it was a message. One phrase kept repeating in every language we tried: "Your mother weeps, and we are her answer." The meaning hit us too late. Humanity had ignored the warnings, drained the oceans, scarred the ground, and poisoned the air. And now, something or someone had decided to collect the debt. The invaders called themselves the Boundless. They moved like storms, their ships alive, pulsing, almost organic. They didn't conquer, they cleansed. Every planet they touched turned to ash, then silence. Humanity fought back with everything it had: nuclear weapons, plasma cannons, fleets built by desperate hands. But none of it mattered. For every alien ship destroyed, 10 more arrived. Yet even as the stars burned, humanity refused to kneel. Among the chaos, a voice rose from the ruins, a commander who refused to let the species die quiet. No one knew his real name. They called him the Last Captain. He gathered what remained of the fleets and led a counterattack beyond Mars. The ships were old, patched together with scrap and courage, but they flew. The Last Captain's words became a spark that lit something in people again. "If Earth has chosen to weep," he said, "then let us teach the stars what her children can do when cornered." And for a moment, Humanity remembered who they were. They fought like no other species ever had. They used the raw fury of survival, the reckless brilliance that only humans could summon. They hacked alien tech mid-battle, turned wreckage into weapons, used asteroids as shields. It wasn't enough to win, but it was enough to hurt the boundless, enough to make them notice. That was when everything changed. For the first time, the boundless spoke directly to humanity. Their message wasn't broadcast in sound, but in thought, a collective whisper in every mind. You were meant to protect her, not destroy her. People screamed as the words burned into their skulls. Cities collapsed under the psychic wave. But beneath the pain, something strange stirred, a flicker of understanding. Some scientists believed the boundless weren't aliens at all, but ancient guardians, entities tied to life itself, awakened by the imbalance humanity had caused. They weren't here to exterminate us. They were here to reset the balance. But in their eyes, we were the disease. Still, humanity didn't break. We adapted, we learned, and we began to strike back not with hate, but with a desperate kind of hope. In the wastelands of what was once Asia, a group of engineers uncovered a secret buried deep beneath the earth, an artifact older than civilization itself. It pulsed with energy that defied all physics. When they activated it, the storms cleared for the first time in years. Some said it was Earth's heart. Others said it was her last gift. Whatever it was, it gave us a weapon, a chance. The last captain gathered the remaining forces for one final assault. They called it Operation Dawnfire. The plan was madness. Fly into the heart of the boundless fleet and strike their command vessel directly. No one expected to return. But they went anyway. Because if Earth could still fight for them, then they would fight for her. The fleet rose through burning clouds, leaving behind a dying planet that had finally remembered what it meant to be alive. In the silence of space, as the stars flickered red, the last captain looked back at the blue world below and whispered, "Forgive us." And then the void erupted in light. The battle that followed would be remembered in fragments, radio bursts, shattered signals, and stories told by the few who survived. The sky itself burned as human and boundless ships clashed, merging fire and fury in a storm that shook the galaxy. No one knew who fired the first shot or who would fire the last. But one thing was certain. Humanity was done running. As the final transmission cut through the noise, a single message echoed across every channel in every language, simple, defiant, human. "You wanted wrath?" the voice said. "Then you got it." And then the stars went dark. No one knows what happened next. Some say humanity fell that day. Others believe the last captain found a way to turn Earth's fury into salvation. But out there, somewhere in the silence between galaxies, something still moves. Something human. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the whisper again. It's not a warning this time. It's a promise. Silence. That was the first thing people remembered after the light faded, the kind of silence that felt alive, heavy, and waiting. For days, nothing moved across the stars. Every transmission went dead. The last thing Earth's remaining stations received was that single phrase, "You wanted wrath? Then you've got it." After that, the galaxy went dark. No signals, no debris, not even static. It was as if everything, human and boundless, had vanished in one final flash. But humanity has a strange relationship with endings. We never really accept them. We dig, question, rebuild, even when the ashes are still warm. So when the silence finally cracked, and a faint signal returned, just a pulse, repeating every few seconds, the world stirred again. The pulse came from deep space, beyond the outer colonies, where the last captain had vanished. The scientists called it the echo. Some said it was just leftover energy from the final battle. Others swore it carried a pattern, coordinates, maybe even a message. The governments were gone, most of the planet barely surviving under scattered city-states and underground shelters. But that didn't stop people from hoping. Hope was all they had left. Among the survivors was a woman named Kira. She wasn't a soldier or a leader, just a communications technician who had worked in one of the last orbital stations before the collapse. When the Boundless attacked, she lost everything: her crew, her home, her faith in what humanity had become. But she survived, drifting in an escape pod for weeks before crashing back to Earth. She thought she was the last one alive until she picked up the echo. Kira couldn't explain why, but the sound felt familiar, like someone breathing across an endless distance. It wasn't random static. It had rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. And deep inside the signal, she thought she could hear a voice. She replayed it over and over until the message began to take shape, a fragment of speech buried under distortion. "Not over! Still! Earth! Awake!" It was faint, broken, but it was human, and that was enough to change everything. Kira began to travel, crossing what was left of civilization. The roads were ruins, swallowed by dust and silence, but she carried the signal on an old handheld transmitter. Along the way, she found others, farmers, scavengers, and ex-soldiers who refused to let the world die completely. They called themselves the Children of Dawnfire, named after the final mission that vanished into the stars. Together, they rebuilt small outposts, repaired old machines, and tried to piece together what had happened. Some believed the last captain's fleet had destroyed the Boundless and paid the ultimate price. Others thought the war still raged somewhere far beyond sight. But Kira believed something different. She believed the message meant the captain was alive, and that Earth herself had changed. Strange things began to happen after the echo was detected. The air felt different, cleaner in some regions, as if the planet was healing itself faster than before. Plants grew in places they hadn't in decades. Old wastelands started to bloom with unfamiliar flowers, glowing faintly in the night. The survivors called it the renewal. Some said it was Earth forgiving her children. Others whispered it was something else, that the Boundless had left their mark on the planet. Then, one night, Kira saw it for herself. She was camped near the ruins of an old observatory when the ground began to hum, a deep, resonant vibration that pulsed with the same rhythm as the echo. She looked up and saw lights streaking across the sky. Not meteors, not satellites, but something alive. The lights moved in patterns, spiraling, dancing, as if tracing invisible symbols across the heavens. And when they faded, the signal on her transmitter grew stronger. Kira didn't sleep that night. She decoded what she could, line by line, her hands trembling as the words slowly formed. Earth. Not alone. Boundless. Broken. Return. She didn't understand what it meant, but it filled her with both fear and purpose. Something was coming back, something tied to the war, to the captain, and to the truth humanity had never fully faced. Over the next months, the echo drew people together. Scattered colonies united again, guided by Kira's findings. Old satellites were reactivated, deep space antennas repaired, and for the first time in years, humans reached for the stars again. The skies that once burned now shimmered with signals and hope. But the more they searched, the stranger things became. Ships sent beyond the atmosphere sometimes returned with their hulls marked by unknown patterns, delicate glowing lines that no scanner could read. Some explorers reported seeing ghostly shapes drifting in the distance, shadows of ships that weren't there. Others swore they heard whispers through their comms, voices speaking in languages no one remembered. It was as if the galaxy itself was waking up, and not all of it was friendly. Kira's team eventually traced the coordinates hidden in the echo. They pointed to a region of space where the Boundless first appeared, a sector long declared forbidden after the war. It was a place humanity once called the Halo Rift, a storm of debris and energy left behind from the final battle. No one who entered had ever returned. But that's exactly where the signal came from. Despite the danger, Kira decided to go. Ilya, sweating, tapped his scanner. "We're not just stuck. The ship's systems think we're in 6 places at once." Kira stared at the viewport. The strange structure, the living ruin, was no longer distant. Somehow, they were inside it. She could see the walls rising around them, carved with the same glowing symbols. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. The medic, who hadn't spoken since the rift, whispered, "It's watching us." The others went silent. No one wanted to admit it, but they all felt it. The presence. It wasn't hostile, not yet, but it was aware. Kira adjusted the comms, searching for the signal again. The captain's voice returned, fractured but clearer now. "Don't fight it. It learns through fear." "What does that mean?" Bren asked. Kira didn't answer. She didn't know. As she listened closer, she realized the voice wasn't just coming from the radio. It was echoing through the metal walls around them. The entire structure was transmitting the same message, in rhythm with the pulses of light. Ilya's instruments beeped. "Captain's signal. Origin points right below us, deep inside that thing." "Then that's where we're going," Kira said quietly. They suited up and opened the hatch. The air that greeted them wasn't vacuum. Somehow, the interior held an atmosphere, thin but breathable. The corridor stretched into the distance, lit by lines of blue light running along the floor. Every sound echoed too long, like they were walking through the inside of a massive throat. The deeper they went, the stronger the heartbeat grew. Then, they found the first mark. It was a human symbol, a flag patch torn from a flight suit, fused into the wall. It bore the insignia of Dawnfire, the last mission. Bren knelt beside it, his voice breaking. "They were here, the whole fleet. They made it." Kira ran her gloved hand along the wall. Beneath the strange alien surface, she could feel something else. Metal. Human-made. "They didn't just crash here," she murmured. "They became part of it." The thought sank in like ice. The structure wasn't just alive, it was fused with remnants of human ships, their technology absorbed into the alien form. Pieces of Dawnfire's fleet were embedded in every wall, every corridor. As they moved deeper, they began finding more evidence. Helmets, shattered screens, fragments of writing etched into the floor by desperate hands. Messages like, "She's waking up," and "Don't let it reach Earth." Kira's chest tightened. "They weren't fighting the boundless anymore," she said softly. "They were fighting whatever this became." Hours passed, though none of them could tell how long. The deeper they went, the less human the place felt. The air shimmered faintly, and the corridors started bending in impossible ways, looping back on themselves. Sometimes Kira saw shadows moving ahead, humanoid shapes that disappeared when she looked straight at them. And then, without warning, they found him. A human body perfectly preserved inside a crystal-like casing, standing upright as if frozen mid-step. His face was peaceful, eyes closed, his uniform bearing the name R. Vale. The last captain. Kira pressed her hand to the glass. "He's alive. Or was." But as she leaned closer, a spark of light flickered behind his eyelids. The crystal pulsed, matching the heartbeat around them. Ilya stumbled back. "That's not natural. He's linked to it." Kira's comm crackled again. The captain's voice returned, not from the ship this time, but from the chamber itself. "We made a mistake. We thought we were saving her." The room shook. The walls rippled like waves, symbols shifting, rearranging into new patterns. Kira's helmet scanner translated one of them automatically. Reclamation. The medic whispered, "What does that mean?" "It means this isn't a ruin," Kira said. "It's a process." The light around them grew brighter, the rhythm faster. The captain's voice grew louder, urgent. "Leave, before she sees you, before you become part of it too. Bren grabbed Kira's arm. We need to go, now! But before they could move, a new voice filled the chamber. Not the captain's, not human at all. It was deep, resonant, calm. You cannot leave. You are part of her. You always were. The air thickened, heavy with vibration. The walls began to breathe. The crystal around the captain cracked open, shards falling away in slow motion. His eyes opened, glowing faintly blue. Kira froze. Captain Vale? He looked at her, his voice layered with echoes. She remembers you. Who? He pointed upward. Earth. The ground shuddered beneath them. A surge of energy rippled through the structure, and for a moment Kira saw flashes, visions not her own. Oceans boiling, forests burning, the boundless ships descending like rain. And then something else. Roots of light spreading from Earth into space, reaching toward the stars. It wasn't destruction. It was connection. Kira fell to her knees, gasping. The images felt too real, too vivid. The captain stepped closer, his movements almost mechanical. When we unleashed Dawnfire, the energy didn't just destroy the boundless, he said. It woke the planet. It merged her essence with theirs. She's no longer just Earth. She's something greater. Bren shook his head. That's impossible. Is it? Vale's expression was unreadable. She's growing, evolving, and she's calling her children back, to become part of her again. Kira felt cold dread settle in her chest. You mean, she wants to absorb us? Not just you, the captain said softly. All of humanity. The chamber lights flared again, and the hum became deafening. The air rippled like liquid, pulling at them. Ilya screamed as his arm brushed the wall, his suit sparked, and the material began to melt into the surface. Kira grabbed him and pulled him back, the skin of his glove fused with glowing threads. We have to get to the ship, Bren shouted, but Vale blocked their path. His expression was calm, resigned. You can't stop this. You can't stop her. Kira looked into his eyes and saw a flicker of humanity still there, buried deep, but not gone. Then help us, she said. If she's alive, if she's changing, we need to understand it before it's too late. The captain hesitated. Understanding won't save you. The chamber convulsed again, light searing through the cracks. The voice of the boundless echoed all around them, layered and immense. The children of ruin have returned. The cycle begins. Kira reached for the captain's hand, desperate. Please, tell me what you saw before you vanished. He looked up at the pulsing ceiling, his voice breaking. I saw the end, and it wasn't fire, it was rebirth. Then the floor split open. The crew fell through a column of blinding light, tumbling weightlessly as reality stretched and folded around them. Kira could feel herself being pulled apart, not physically, but through memory. She saw flashes of Earth, green and alive again, cities overgrown with silver vines, skies lit by strange auroras. Voices whispered in her mind, both human and alien, repeating one phrase over and over. Return to the source, and then blackness. When Kira opened her eyes, she was lying in a field of soft blue grass under a twilight sky. Her helmet was gone, the air warm and alive. In the distance, she saw something rising from the horizon, a towering shape of glass and stone that pulsed like a heartbeat. Bren's voice came faintly over the comm. Kira, where are we? She didn't know. It looked like Earth, but it wasn't. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she could still hear the echo, slow, steady, counting down. The air was too still. Every sound felt heavy, as if the world itself was listening. Kira stood in the blue field, her mind struggling to catch up with what her eyes saw. The stars above were wrong, too close, too bright, as though the sky had been painted by a hand that didn't understand distance. The ground hummed faintly under her boots, carrying that same rhythmic pulse she had felt inside the structure. The heartbeat hadn't stopped. It had only changed form. "Kira, respond!" Bren's voice cracked through static. "Are you alive?" She pressed her earpiece. "I'm here, I think." She turned slowly, scanning the horizon. "I don't know where we are. It feels like Earth, but it's not." There was silence. Then Bren's breath caught. "Look behind you." Kira turned. In the distance, the ground rose into a ridge, and beyond it stood a shape, something vast and half-transparent, stretching into the sky. It looked like a city made of glass and light, alive with movement. Shadows passed through its walls like memories drifting between moments. "Ilya's hurt," Bren said weakly over the comm. "His arm's not healing right. It's like the wound's growing." "Can you move?" "Barely. But we found the captain." Kira froze. "You what?" "He's here. Alive this time. Or something close to it. He's waiting at the edge of the city." The transmission broke into static, but she heard the last words clearly. "He says the cycle's almost complete." Kira started running. The grass bent under her feet like water, glowing brighter with every step. She felt the pulse through the ground, faster now, matching her heartbeat. As she approached the ridge, the air shimmered, bending light like heat. The world flickered for a moment, blue fields replaced by burned forests, then by oceans, then back again. It was as if she was slipping between versions of reality. When she reached the top, she saw them. Bren stood at the base of the glass city, helping Ilya sit upright. His arm looked worse, veins glowing faintly, skin merging with the ground beneath him. But standing beside them was Captain Vale. His uniform was torn, but his presence was commanding, almost unreal. His eyes glowed faintly with the same blue light that filled the sky. Kira slowed, breath heavy. "Captain, what is this place?" Vale turned toward her. "The crossing point, the place where Earth and the boundless became one." She shook her head. "That's impossible." He smiled faintly. "So was humanity's survival. And yet here you stand." Bren stepped forward. "You said the cycle was almost complete." "What cycle?" Vale looked up at the city, his tone quiet. "Reclamation. Renewal. Every civilization that grows too fast leaves scars. Earth was dying. The boundless offered her a way to live again, but it required a merging. They weren't our destroyers, Kira. They were her cure." "Then why attack us?" she asked. "Because we were the infection." His gaze softened. "And because she loved us enough to start over." Kira felt her stomach twist. "Start over? You mean erase us?" "No," Vale said. "Transform us." The ground trembled, a deep rumble echoing across the valley. The city of glass shifted, its towers rotating slowly as beams of light pierced the clouds. The heartbeat in the earth grew louder, almost unbearable. Kira clutched her head as images flashed in her mind, people turning into light, oceans rising, mountains blooming with strange energy. "Captain, make it stop!" she shouted. "I can't," he said. "It's begun. The signal you followed, the echo, wasn't a distress call. It was the awakening sequence. You triggered it when you entered the rift." Bren cursed under his breath. "So we doomed what was left of humanity?" Vale looked at him, and for the first time, Kira saw pain in his expression. "Maybe not. There's still a choice. That's why you're here." Kira stepped closer. "What kind of choice?" He didn't answer immediately. The hum deepened and the air vibrated around them. The boundless gave Earth the power to remake herself, but she still carries human memory. She doesn't want to erase her children. She wants them to become part of her consciousness, to exist forever. Ilya groaned, his voice weak. "That's not living." Vale's gaze shifted toward him. "Maybe not the way you understand it, but it's peace." Kira clenched her fists. You think being absorbed is peace? That's not life. It's surrender. The captain's voice softened. You don't understand what comes next, Kira. You've seen the wars, the fires, the greed. Earth remembers every wound. This is her healing. And like all healing, it requires pain. A crack split the air. One of the city's towers shattered into light, scattering across the sky like burning dust. The pulse quickened again, now more like a drumbeat. Kira stumbled as the ground rippled beneath her. The field was no longer blue. It shifted color with every pulse, waves of red, gold, and silver spreading outward. Bren looked at the horizon. Something's moving out there. Kira followed his gaze. Shapes were forming in the distance, figures made of light and shadow, walking in perfect rhythm toward them. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They looked human, but their faces were blurred, like unfinished reflections. Vale stepped forward, eyes glowing brighter. They're the first ones. The ones who gave themselves to her willingly. What do they want? They want you to choose. The shapes stopped at the edge of the field, staring silently. The hum around them changed pitch, now almost like a voice trying to form words. Kira felt it inside her chest, an emotion that wasn't her own. It wasn't anger. It was sorrow. The sky darkened. Above the city, clouds twisted into a spiral of light. A massive structure began to descend, breaking through the atmosphere, a vessel unlike anything human or boundless. It looked alive, shaped like a vast, beating heart made of metal and flame. Vale looked up. That's her. Kira stared, breath caught. Earth? The core of her new form, he said quietly. She's reaching for the last of her children. Bren's voice trembled. We're not going with her. Vale turned toward him slowly. You don't have a choice. Kira raised her weapon, though she knew it was useless. We always have a choice. The captain didn't flinch. You think I didn't fight it? I did. I led the fleet straight into the Boundless, tried to end it before it began. But when I saw what we unleashed, what she was becoming, I understood. We made her this way. Now she's just finishing what we started. The ground shook harder. Cracks opened across the field, glowing with molten light. The figures of light began to move again, surrounding them in silence. Bren fired into the air, the shots disappearing into nothing. The sound didn't even echo. Kira grabbed Ilya's arm, pulling him up. We have to find a way out. There's nowhere to go, Vale said, stepping closer. You can't run from the source. Then I'll face it, she said. But not like this. Before anyone could stop her, Kira ran toward the city. The ground pulsed beneath her feet, the rhythm merging with her heartbeat until she could no longer tell them apart. The glass towers glowed brighter as she approached, and the air filled with a sound like whispering voices, all speaking her name. She reached the base of the largest tower and pressed her hand against it. The surface was warm, alive, and when she touched it, a flood of memories surged through her. She saw humanity's history. Every mistake, every act of creation, every spark of love and loss. She saw Earth watching it all, feeling every wound as her own. Then she heard a voice, soft, vast, and unmistakably human. Kira, do you understand now? She swallowed hard. You're her. I am what remains of her, and of you. Why show me this? Because you must decide. Merge with me, and humanity endures. Resist, and all that's left will fade. Kira felt tears on her cheeks. There has to be another way. There never was another way, the voice said gently. You built me to survive. Now survival demands transformation. Behind her, she heard Bren shouting her name. The light intensified, turning the air into blinding fire. The city began to rise, lifting from the ground as the massive heart-shaped vessel descended closer. The pulse thundered like the beat of the universe itself. Kira looked back one last time, at Bren, still fighting to pull Ilya to his feet. At Vale, standing calm as the light enveloped him, at the endless horizon of shifting color. And then the voice spoke again, closer now, filling her every thought. The cycle ends here. The heartbeat reached its peak, shaking the ground until it cracked open beneath her. The light swallowed everything. And in that final moment before the world disappeared, Kira whispered, "Then let it end with me." The sound that followed wasn't an explosion. It was a single note, pure and endless, the sound of creation holding its breath. Then silence. The silence stretched on, thick, endless, almost sacred. For a few seconds there was nothing. No sound, no light, no gravity. Just stillness. Then came the breath. A slow, trembling inhale that wasn't entirely Kira's. The light faded, and she opened her eyes. She was still standing, but the world around her was gone. The blue fields, the glass city, the horizon, they had vanished. In their place stretched a vast emptiness filled with floating fragments of light, drifting like embers in deep water. It wasn't space, but it wasn't Earth either. It felt like the space between, where thought and memory lived after matter was gone. Kira looked down at her hands. They glowed faintly, the veins in her skin threaded with the same blue light she had seen in the captain's eyes. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't right." A voice answered, not from around her, but from within. "You made your choice." She spun around, searching the void. "You said it would end with me." It did. And it began again. The heartbeat returned, distant but growing louder, vibrating through the empty space. Kira pressed her palms to her head. "Where's Bren? Where's Ilya? The captain?" The voice didn't answer immediately. Then, through the haze, shapes began to form, ghostly silhouettes of her friends. They were standing far away, flickering like reflections in a broken mirror. But they weren't moving. Kira ran toward them, calling out, but the distance never closed. Each step she took stretched the space around her, as if reality itself was rejecting her movement. The voice followed her. "They are still alive, somewhere you can't yet reach." She stopped, her chest tightening. "What are you doing to me?" "You are connected now. You are part of the network that binds all things, what Earth has become." But something went wrong. The sequence fractured when you resisted. The merging is incomplete. Kira felt the truth hit like a cold blade. "You mean I didn't merge, but I didn't stop it either?" "Yes." The fragments of light around her began to shift, forming images, Earth, shining and alive, but changed. Cities had grown into mountains of glass and crystal, glowing veins of energy threading across continents. But above it all, hanging in orbit, were enormous structures, hollow shells that pulsed with the same heartbeat. Kira whispered, "She's remade herself." "She has," the voice said. "But now something else has awakened with her." The images changed again. This time the glowing patterns turned darker, spreading like cracks through glass. The once bright towers began to flicker, then dim. In the shadows, a faint shimmer appeared, black light twisting against the rhythm. Kira felt the air turn cold. What is that? A remnant of the boundless that never died. When the merge began, their essence buried deep within her core. They were not destroyed, only waiting. Now they move again, feeding on her energy, feeding on you. The realization hit her with terrifying clarity. Earth hadn't been saved. It was being consumed from within. Kira steadied herself. "Then there's still a way to stop it." "Perhaps. But you cannot do it from here." Before she could respond, a surge of force hit her from behind. The void cracked open, tearing her from the light. She fell through darkness, her body spinning weightlessly until she crashed onto something solid. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. She gasped, rolling onto her back. Above her stretched a ruined sky, gray, storm-filled, lit by faint red flashes. She was back on Earth, or what was left of it. The land was twisted beyond recognition. Mountains bent at impossible angles. Rivers flowed upward into clouds of mist. Fragments of buildings jutted from the ground like fossilized bones. The air buzzed faintly, heavy with static. And in the distance, she saw something enormous, an engine of light and shadow pulsing in the center of a crater. It was alive. Kira pushed herself to her feet, heart pounding. Her hands were still glowing, the light inside her unstable. She stumbled forward, trying to understand what she was seeing. As she drew closer, she realized the massive structure was built from both organic and mechanical parts. Metal fused with roots, circuits intertwined with living tissue. It pulsed like a living heart. She felt a voice stir inside her again, this time not the calm tone she'd heard before, but something colder, fractured. "We are not Earth. We are the remainder, the boundless within the bound." Kira stepped back. "You're the corruption." The voice grew louder. "You call it that. But we are what made you. We are the will that survived extinction." She shook her head. "You're what destroyed us." "No," it said softly. "You destroyed yourselves. We only helped you finish it." The ground split open beneath her feet. She fell again, sliding down a slope of black dust until she landed in front of a glowing core, the same heartbeat she'd heard since the beginning. Only now, it was faint, faltering. Something moved near it. A figure stepped out of the shadows, covered in dust and light. Kira's breath caught. It was Bren. He looked exhausted, pale, his eyes glowing faintly like hers. "You made it," he said weakly. "I thought you were gone." Kira rushed to him. "Where's Ilya?" Bren's voice broke. "Gone. The ground took him. He didn't scream. He just vanished." She wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. The air vibrated again, a low hum rising from the ground. Bren looked up at the pulsing structure. "It's not just alive. It's growing. It's spreading underground, linking everything left on the planet, and it's not her anymore." Kira turned slowly toward the light. "The boundless infection?" He nodded. "It's using the connection she built to take control. It's rewriting her code, rewriting us." The realization hit her like ice. If the Boundless gained control of the network, they wouldn't just consume Earth, they'd spread across the galaxy again, through every frequency, every signal. Bren held out a small device, cracked but still glowing. "I found this near the core. It's a fragment of the original echo, the pulse you tracked. If we can amplify it, we might be able to restore her original pattern." Kira took the device, studying its faint hum. "You're saying we can wake Earth again?" "Maybe," he said, "but we have to reach the heart." They looked toward the crater where the massive pulse engine beat faintly in the darkness. Lightning flashed above it, painting the horizon in red and silver. The ground trembled with every pulse. Kira nodded. "Then that's where we go." As they began their descent, the air thickened, filled with whispers, voices of thousands overlapping. The sound wasn't chaotic. It was organized, rhythmic, chanting in a language neither of them knew. Bren glanced at her. "They're calling something." She nodded, eyes locked on the glowing crater. "Not something," she whispered. "Someone." When they reached the base, they saw it. A massive cocoon of light and shadow hanging in the center, pulsing like a living heart. Inside it, a shape began to move. Kira froze. "No." Through the translucent shell, she saw a human form, tall, familiar. The face was calm, eyes closed. Captain Vale. The cocoon pulsed again, and the whispers grew louder. Bren's voice was barely a breath. "He's becoming it." Kira felt her stomach twist. "He's merging with the Boundless." The cocoon cracked, light spilling out like molten gold. The air surged, hot and electric, and a voice echoed across the crater. Vale's voice, but deeper, layered with something alien. "You could not end the cycle, Kira. So I will." The light around him flared, and the ground began to lift, tearing free from the planet's surface. Bren grabbed Kira's hand as debris rained down around them. She shouted over the roar, "If he completes the merge, it's over. Everything will be gone." He held her tighter. "Then we stop him, even if it kills us." Above them, Vale opened his eyes. They burned brighter than stars, and the world itself began to rise. The sky tore apart in streaks of silver and crimson light as the ground rumbled beneath Kira and Bren's feet. Everything around them began to rise: stone, dust, fragments of old cities, even the air itself twisting upward toward the cocoon that now glowed like a dying sun. Inside it, Captain Vale's form flickered, shifting between human and something far beyond it. The boundless infection had almost consumed him. Kira's lungs burned as she shouted over the roar. "He's merging with the network. Once it's done, he'll have control of everything." Bren clutched her arm, pulling her toward cover as a wave of heat rolled across the crater. "Then we cut him off before he finishes." But how? The light surrounding Vale wasn't just energy. It was consciousness, code and memory fused together. Every attempt to reach him could destroy them both. Kira's mind raced as she felt the faint pulse of the echo device in her pocket. It vibrated in sync with her heartbeat. She realized suddenly that it wasn't just a key, it was a link. The voice inside her returned, faint but clear. "He carries her spark. If you reach him, you can still wake her." Kira gritted her teeth. "I don't need to reach him. I need to remind him who he was." She sprinted toward the rising core, the air cutting her face like glass. Bren yelled after her, but she didn't stop. Lightning streaked past, illuminating the fragments of the old world floating above them. Roads, towers, entire forests suspended mid-air like ghosts. It was as if Earth itself was being ripped apart to rebuild something new. Vale hovered at the center of it all, his arms outstretched, his body glowing brighter with every pulse. His voice thundered across the air, layered with countless echoes. "You call this destruction, but this is evolution. Humanity refused to listen. Now I give them unity." Kira cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "That's not unity! It's surrender!" He turned toward her, his face half covered in light, the other half still human, tired, scarred, and full of sorrow. "You don't understand. I saw what came after us. I saw what the boundless truly feared. It wasn't extinction. It was choice. Humanity can't survive divided." Kira's voice broke. "You're wrong. It's what makes us alive. It's what makes us human." The cocoon trembled. The boundless presence inside him flared, furious, its voice overlapping his. "She will fail. She is not whole." Kira pressed the echo device to her chest and whispered, "Then let's see if I can remind you who we really are." She raised the device high and slammed her palm against it. The ground exploded in a wave of blue light. The pulse spread outward like ripples in water, climbing the air, reaching Vale's cocoon. He screamed, not in pain, but in resistance. The light inside him flickered, the boundless essence writhing against the echo's signal. For a moment, Kira saw the man he used to be, the one who laughed, who led, who still believed in the spark of humanity that refused to die. "Kira," he gasped, his voice breaking through the distortion. "If I stop, they'll take her. The boundless will consume what's left." "Then fight it," she shouted. "Don't give them what they want." Bren joined her, holding another fragment of the echo core he'd salvaged. "If we sink both fragments, we can force the original pattern through him." Kira nodded, tears mixing with the ash on her face. "Do it." Together, they activated the second fragment. The pulses collided mid-air, forming a bridge of light between them and Vale. The ground beneath them began to lift, carrying them toward him. The world was shaking apart, but they kept their focus, their eyes locked on the man who once saved them all. Vale's body convulsed as the Boundless tried to take full control. "You can't stop what's coming," it hissed through him. "We were born from your fear. We are your creation." Kira stepped forward, her voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "Maybe you were, but fear isn't all we are." She reached through the light, her hand touching his chest. For a brief, impossible moment, everything went silent. The light turned soft, the roar faded, and time seemed to hold its breath. Kira's memories flooded through her, images of the world before the fall, children laughing in the rain, music echoing in a crowded street, the feeling of sunlight on her face, every small thing that made being human worth it. Vale's eyes widened as those same memories rushed into him. The human side of him trembled, struggling against the machine. I remember." The Boundless screamed through him, its voice twisting like static. "You can't destroy us." Kira looked up at him, her voice calm. "We don't need to. We just need to remind you how to be alive." Then she pressed the echo device to his heart. The explosion was soundless, an expanding wave of light that swallowed everything. The Boundless screamed, then shattered into fragments of fading shadow. The rising debris fell back to the ground, crashing in waves of dust. The sky cleared, the red clouds dissolving into faint blue. When the light faded, Kira was on her knees, breathing hard. Bren was beside her, coughing, but alive. The crater was quiet. At the center, the cocoon was gone. Only Vale remained, lying still, the glow gone from his eyes. Kira crawled to him, her heart pounding. "Vale," she whispered, "you did it. You stopped it." He opened his eyes slowly, a faint smile on his lips. "You finished it," he said weakly. "She's free now." Kira looked up, and for the first time in years, she saw the sky alive again. Streams of light danced across the horizon, not as weapons, but as living energy. The planet was breathing. The heartbeat she'd heard for so long was soft now, steady, human. But something caught her attention, a strange shimmer above the ruins. The fragments of the Boundless weren't gone. They were reforming, smaller this time, gathering into a single point high in the atmosphere. Bren stood, squinting at it. "What is that?" Kira's pulse quickened. "It's not over." The shimmer pulsed once, then split open like an eye. A beam of white light shot across the sky, vanishing into the distance, beyond Earth's atmosphere, straight into the void. Bren's face went pale. "They're not dying. They're leaving." Kira stared after the light, her voice barely a whisper. "No. They're spreading again." Vale coughed weakly, his voice fading. "It's part of the balance. The Boundless can't be destroyed, only changed. They'll seek another host, another world." Kira turned to him, tears in her eyes. "Then what was all this for?" He smiled faintly. "For a chance. To remember who we are. To make sure we don't forget again." He closed his eyes, and the glow around his body dissolved into dust. The wind carried it upward, scattering it across the reborn sky. Bren put a hand on Kira's shoulder. "We stopped them here. That's what matters." She nodded slowly, her gaze still locked on the stars. For now. The camera would have lingered there, the quiet aftermath, the beauty of a world reborn, but still haunted by what it almost became. The faint hum of Earth's heartbeat echoed in the background, steady and alive. But if someone looked closer, they'd see something strange in the horizon's light. A faint reflection of the old Boundless pattern flickering across the clouds, almost invisible. It pulsed once, twice, then vanished. And far beyond Earth's orbit, somewhere deep in the cold dark, the beam of light that had left the planet reached its destination. A distant, uncharted world. The surface began to ripple as something beneath it stirred. A faint echo whispered through the void. "We remember." The heartbeat began again, this time not from Earth, but from the stars themselves. The wind carried the scent of rain across the broken fields. It had been weeks since the light faded from the sky and the world stopped shaking. The storms that once tore through the continents were gone now, replaced by a soft stillness that felt strange, almost sacred. Earth had changed again, less polished, less perfect, but alive in a way it hadn't been for centuries. Kira stood on the edge of what used to be the crater. It was now a vast lake, calm and blue, reflecting the sky. Green had begun to spread again, grass pushing through the cracks of old concrete, trees sprouting where metal once ruled. The air hummed quietly, a softer version of the pulse that had once threatened to consume everything. It was like the planet was breathing, healing itself one slow heartbeat at a time. Bren joined her, holding a small transmitter. "It's stabilizing faster than we thought," he said. "The network's gone quiet. No trace of boundless code left in the core systems." Kira nodded, watching a flock of birds glide over the water. "She's resting," she said softly. "Maybe for the first time." He smiled faintly. "And so should we." They stood in silence for a while. Neither spoke of Vale, not yet. His name still hung heavy between them, a reminder of everything they'd lost and everything they'd barely managed to save. His sacrifice had stopped the boundless infection, but not without cost. Parts of the old world, the archives, the satellite systems, the orbital colonies, were gone forever. Humanity's voice in the stars had gone quiet. But for Kira, that silence wasn't an ending. It was a pause. Later that evening, as the sun sank low, they returned to the makeshift camp where the survivors had gathered. There were fewer than 1,000 people scattered across the land, but they worked together, rebuilding homes, planting seeds, rediscovering what it meant to live without machines doing everything for them. The survivors came from every part of the world, drawn together by the same echo that had called Kira and Bren. When she walked through the camp, people looked up and nodded to her. Some smiled, others simply watched. They all knew what she had done, though none of them said it aloud. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about surviving, about remembering what they were capable of. At the edge of the camp stood an old comms tower they'd managed to rebuild. It wasn't powerful enough to reach the stars anymore, but it could send messages across the planet. Bren had reprogrammed it to track the faint energy signature left by the boundless beam that had escaped into space. Every few days, they checked it, just to see if anything had changed. That night, as Kira sat by the fire, Bren walked over, holding the receiver. "Got something," he said quietly. She frowned. "From space?" "Maybe," he replied. "It's faint, barely there, but it's patterned, not noise." She stood and followed him to the tower. The air was cool, the stars bright above them. Bren turned a few dials, and the signal came through. A soft, rhythmic pulse. It wasn't like the boundless code they'd known. It felt calmer, almost gentle. Kira closed her eyes and listened. "It's her," she whispered. "It's Earth. She's reaching out again." He looked at her carefully. "You think she's still connected out there?" Kira hesitated. "Not in the same way. But maybe the boundless fragments carried part of her, part of us, into the stars. Maybe that's what evolution really meant. Not losing ourselves, just spreading who we are." Bren leaned against the tower, watching the signal fade in and out. "You think that's a good thing?" She smiled faintly. "It depends on what we become." For a long while, they just stood there, listening to the heartbeat echo through the static. It wasn't threatening this time. It was a promise, a quiet reminder that humanity's story wasn't finished. Days turned into weeks, and the world slowly came back to life. Rain returned, filling the rivers and lakes. The soil grew fertile again, and new crops began to sprout. Children laughed as they ran between the tents, their voices echoing across the valley. For the first time in centuries, people were learning to live without the machines they once worshipped. Kira spent her days mapping the new energy fields, tracing the remnants of the old network. Sometimes she would find small anomalies, tiny flickers of data hidden in the wind, faint lights in the soil. Each one felt like a whisper, a trace of the Earth's consciousness still woven into everything. One afternoon, as she walked along the lake shore, she found a small piece of crystal half buried in the mud. When she picked it up, it glowed faintly in her hand. For a second, she swore she heard Vale's voice, soft, distant. "You did what I couldn't." She closed her fingers around it and smiled. "You helped?" she murmured. When she returned to camp that night, she set the crystal beside the fire. Its light pulsed gently in rhythm with her heartbeat. Bren joined her again, handing her a mug of water. "You ever think about going back out there, beyond Earth?" She looked up at the stars. "Sometimes, but not yet. We're not ready." He nodded. "Maybe someday." "Maybe," she said quietly. "But next time, we'll go as explorers, not conquerors." The fire crackled between them, the reflection dancing in their eyes. Around them, the others sang softly, old songs, half-remembered, carried through generations. The sound was imperfect but beautiful, filled with life. Kira felt something settle inside her then. A peace she hadn't known in years. They had survived the collapse, the war, the silence. Humanity had faced its own creation and come through scarred but unbroken. And maybe that was enough. As the night deepened, she rose and walked to the edge of the camp. The sky shimmered with stars, countless and endless. Somewhere out there, fragments of the boundless still drifted, changed, waiting, learning. But now she didn't fear them. If they ever returned, she believed they might not come as enemies. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the faint hum of the earth's pulse. It wasn't the harsh mechanical rhythm it once was. It was natural now, gentle, steady, alive. Kira whispered into the night, "We hear you." And somewhere deep beneath the soil, the world answered, not in words, but in warmth, in motion, in life. By morning, the first dawn of the new age broke across the land. The light was softer, golden, spreading through mist and green fields. The survivors gathered by the lakeside, watching the sunrise in silence. For the first time in generations, the horizon wasn't filled with smoke or fire. It was clear. Bren stood beside her, his voice quiet. "So what now?" Kira smiled. "Now we live, we rebuild, and maybe someday we forgive ourselves." He nodded slowly. "And if they ever come back?" She looked toward the stars, her eyes reflecting their faint glow. "Then we'll be ready, and this time we'll meet them as equals." The wind carried her words away, rising toward the heavens. The faint hum in the distance echoed once more, a final heartbeat, soft and steady. It wasn't the boundless anymore. It wasn't fear or control. It was simply life continuing, endlessly, quietly, beautifully. Kira closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The world felt lighter now. The past was still there, but it no longer defined them. Humanity had fallen, rebuilt, and remembered what it meant to be alive. The sky brightened, and the last traces of the old storms vanished into light. The camera would have lingered on her face, calm, determined, human, as the wind rustled through the grass. Far above, unseen but felt, a pulse of light drifted through space, carrying Earth's new song into the endless dark. It was not a warning this time. It was a beginning,